Hello. For this presentation, our group will be discussing neural networks for information retrieval as part of our Information Retrieval CAP 6776 course at Florida Atlantic University. Throughout this presentation, our group will break down the concepts of neural networks and provide examples as they relate back to the everyday world. We look forward to engaging you in the world of neural networks and showing how they benefit us each and every single day. This slide shows our table of contents for this presentation. The topics that we will be discussing on are broken down into sections, starting with an intro to neural networks, which is essentially showing what they are and how they are used. Then we will show the benefits of these networks. After that, we will be demonstrating examples in how these networks closely relate back to modern day environments such as the medical field. And lastly, we will conclude this presentation with a summary of our research and what the outcome of neural networks in information retrieval was in our findings. This section of our presentation will focus on the introduction to neural networks. When learning about neural networks, we find that they are quite intricate in the makeup of the models. The brief chart shows what the basic means of what makes up a neural network, starting with quantitative models, which link inputs and outputs and branch to the adaptive learning process, and demonstrates a clear connection in the comparison to that of the human brain. Overall, a neural network can take small amounts of numbers at a time to make estimations and continue to learn through modifications of that data.
Artificial intelligence is a field of computer science that is focused on creating intelligent systems from machines that replicate human intelligence. Machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence that involves teaching computers to learn from data. Some examples of machine learning models include decision trees, k-nearest means, linear and logistic regression, and then we have neural networks, which is a specific class of machine learning algorithms inspired by the human brain. These models are used to recognize different patterns in the data, and they are used for tasks like image and speech recognition. They can be used for supervised and unsupervised learning as well. And then there's deep learning, which is a subset of neural networks, where there are multiple layers of neural networks. A neural network is comprised of one or more neurons that mimic biological neurons. So in this image, we have a biological neuron. We have dendrites, which receive electrical signals from other neurons, and the cell body, which integrates the signals. And once they reach a certain threshold, the electrical impulse is generated and travel down the axon. Once it reaches the axon, neurotransmitters are released into synapses, and then those signals are transmitted to neighboring neurons. When we have a neuron in a neural network, it is actually a simplified mathematical model, and it serves as a basic processing unit within a network. A perceptron is the building block of a neural network. In the image, we have a perceptron, which on the left we have the input features, which are denoted x1 to xn, with 1 being the constant or the bias. These are the features or attributes of the input data. If, for an example, we had an image classification task, each pixel might represent an input feature, or in the matter of a vector, it would represent an x value. Next, we have the weights. Each input feature has an associated weight, and these weights represent the strength of the connections between the input feature and the perceptron. They determine the impact of each feature on the output. Following, we have the weighted sum, which is the dot product of the input feature x and the corresponding weights. It represents a linear combination. Next, we have the activation function, which in this example is a step function. Other activation functions include ReLU, tan, and sigmoid functions, and these tend to perform nonlinear transformations of the data. Following that, we have the output of the perceptron, which is the result of applying the activation function to the weighted sum, and also includes a bias. In a perceptron, the output is binary, which means it is 0 or 1, or it could be continuous depending on the activation function. A typical neural network includes 3 types of layers. We have the input layer, hidden layer, and output layer. The input layer receives data, whether it's images, vectors, signals, or text. This data is then passed on to the following layers. The hidden layers can be one or more, and they transform the data using mathematical equations. Each neuron in a hidden layer is connected to each neuron before and each neuron after it, which creates a network of weighted connections. The output layer is the final layer, which provides the solution of the problem at hand, whether it's for prediction or classification. The architecture of a neural network can vary, and different complexities are determined by the problem. Deep neural networks include multiple hidden layers, and a network's depth and width shape the network's capacity to model different types of relationships. Often tuning and optimization is required for optimal performance of a neural network. Other important factors are the number of neurons in each layer, the activation function used, and the strength of connections between neurons.
This section of our presentation will focus on the benefits of neural networks. Neural networks offer a wide variety of benefits, starting with the adaptability. Neural networks are able to take in, learn from that data, and then process it. However, that data can be used to take another set of data, learn, and process again, allowing for a greater level of learning.
Hello, my name is Angelica Vidas, and I will be discussing in a little bit more detail on what is meant when we say that neural networks are adaptive. So if we look at the figure below, first it would collect and understand the data. Then we would prepare the data after we train a model, then test this model. Then at the end, it would improve accuracy where it deems it necessary. So basically, first a problem has to be identified by the neural network. Then this data will be collected, understood, and prepared. And once this model is tested, it will be improved if necessary. So basically, this figure is just showing the machine learning life cycle. And it's just showing an example on how that life cycle looks like. Thank you.
Another benefit to neural networks are their ability to generalize. This essentially means that the network can handle data that isn't necessarily perfect in form and or incomplete, but can still take that data, process it, and continue learning. The ability to generalize is important because not all data sets are going to be complete, and being able to still process it is important and equates to the benefits of fault tolerance.
Other benefits for neural networks are that it has the ability to learn and model nonlinear and complex relationships, which is important in real-life scenarios since many relationships between inputs and outputs are both nonlinear and complex. Neural networks also don't impose any restrictions on input variables, such as how these inputs should be distributed, unlike other prediction techniques. It's also the best at modeling data with high volatility and a non-constant variance, because it has the ability to learn hidden relationships in the data without it having to impose a fixed relationship in the data, which is helpful in financial time series forecasting, such as stock prices, because the data volatility is really high. Neural networks can also reveal hidden patterns, predictions, and relationships. It can also improve decision processes. Some examples include image recognition, natural language processing that involves character and voice recognition, game playing, financial predictions for stock prices, currency, options, features, bankruptcy, and bond ratings, etc. In the case of image processing and character recognition, since neural networks have the ability to take in many inputs, can process them to infer hidden complex nonlinear relationships, they play a crucial role. Character recognition has a lot of applications in fraud detection, such as bank fraud, and even national security assessments. Image recognition is a field that has been increasing over time, with many applications from facial recognition to social media, cancer detection medicine to satellite imagery processing for agricultural and defense usage. The research on neural networks has had a pretty big impact by paving the way for deep neural networks that form the base of deep learning. And it has now opened up many types of innovations from computer vision, speech recognition, and natural language processing. One example of this being self-driving cars. Thank you.
For this section, we will be discussing examples of neural networks in sound. Starting off with neural networks in sound is the process of signal segmentation, which is important to understand as it's the foundation for breaking signals down for ease of processing. In the diagram below, it can be seen that this process is completed by dividing signals, filtering, transforming data, running feature extraction, and pre-processing. This process was instrumental in the understanding of the need for signal processing in the biomedical field so that the process could be modified for a better understanding such as heartbeat detection. Continuing deeper into the automatic detection of heartbeats, because the environment of heartbeat detections might not always be 100% stable, the use of convolutional networks was implemented. This essentially allows for the mitigation of pre-processing. This process was noted for being tested on a heartbeat sounds that were pre-recorded, and the method for convolutional networks was able to accurately interpret the signals. This process has three phases, all of which are reliant on the last, starting with the processing, then the training of CNN to detect signals, and lastly, the labeling of the heartbeats, which is basically post-processing. In this figure, it's demonstrated the CNN architecture of heartbeat detection as proposed in an article by the University of Maribor. Essentially, the structure of this contains one-dimensional convolutional layers and then one-dimensional sub-sampling layers, all of which equate to one complete layer at the end that determines if there was or was not a heartbeat.
Convolutional neural networks, also referred to as CNNs, are specialized types of neural networks, and they are used for analyzing visual data. Some tasks are image classification, object detection, and image segmentation. What makes CNN special is the ability to quickly learn features from input by capturing local and global patterns. A CNN must have at least one convolutional layer, where a filter or kernel is applied to the image to detect local patterns. Some common local patterns are corners, edges, and textures. These features are then combined to detect complex shapes and images. CNNs also include pooling layers, which are used to reduce dimensionality and focus on important features. We are going to look at a research paper titled Medical Image Retrieval based on Convolutional Neural Network and Supervised Hashing. Due to the vast increase in data available, especially in the medical field, information retrieval has been an important task. This paper focuses specifically on CBIR, which is content-based image retrieval, and how it is used to search for similar images. The purpose of the paper was to test a new framework, the Siamese framework, for medical image retrieval. The Siamese framework pairs image inputs and shares weights and loss function. It also looks at a new hash coding loss function, which is used to retrieve the most similar images. This research paper conducted two experiments. The first was to explore feature extraction with CNNs. 120,000 images of 6 different body parts was used. The second experiment was to compare the Siamese framework, which is proposed in this research paper, with 2 other CNN-based hashing methods. 199,000 images of 4 different body parts was used for this experiment. Here we have a look of the training data set. These images were taken from the Cancer Imaging Archives. Here we have an image of the Siamese method framework. To start off, there are 2 identical paths that, as you can see, share weights and parameters. Each path has then 3 CNNs, 3 pooling layers, and 2 fully connected dense layers. The outputs are then processed in the new hash optimized loss function, which minimizes the distance between similar images and maximizes the distance between dissimilar images. The binary code is then used to retrieve the most similar image from the query. Let's look at the results of the research paper. Here we have the mean average precision, which is an evaluation metric used in object detection, image retrieval, and information retrieval. As you can see in the graph, on the y-axis we have the MAP, and on the x-axis we have the top K image retrieval. As you can see, the Siamese method has the highest MAP values, and the results show that the proposed method retrieves similar images faster and has improved accuracy of image retrieval than the other deep learning models.
In this section, we are going to briefly summarize our findings throughout this presentation.
In conclusion, neural networks are quite intricate since it's made up of quantitative models, it's adaptive to learning, and it's comparative to a brain. Neural networks is a subset of machine learning, which lies in artificial intelligence. It should be noted that deep learning is a subset of neural networks where it uses multiple layers of neural networks. It mimics the human brain in neurons. A neuron in a neural network is just a simplified mathematical model and is the basic processing unit in a network. A perceptron is the building block of a neural network. The model that was shown in one of the previous slides showcased the model of perceptron, where there are inputs, weights, a weighted sum, and an activation function and an output. And it should be noted that the first input is a constant. There are three layers, which are the input, hidden layers, and output. It's both adaptive and it can generalize. And when we say generalize, it means that it can handle data that isn't complete since it can still take in that data, process it, and continue learning, which can equate to the benefit of fault tolerance. Now, when we say it's adaptive, essentially, that just means that it can take in the data, it collects and understands the data, it prepares the data, it trains and tests the model, and then based on if it's necessary, it will improve its accuracy. And you can have, and neural networks have many applications because of its useful properties. Since it doesn't impose restrictions on input variables, it's the best at modeling data with Hall volatility and non-constant variance. And it can also improve decision processes, such as seen in image recognition, language processing, and game playing.
Overall, it can be seen that neural networks are made up of quantitative models that are comparative to the human brain. This can be seen from the benefits of adaptability and being able to take in data, including incomplete or irrelevant data, but still being able to process it and learn from it. Then, we looked at one example of detective heartbeats through the use of convolutional neural networks that are phase-reliant and built upon one-dimensional layers in order to end in a phase of one complete layer which determines if a heartbeat was or was not detected.
CNNs are useful for information retrieval, especially for images. It can be used in many industries, such as the medical field. In the second example, which focuses on the research paper, medical image retrieval based on convolutional neural network and supervised hashtag, focused mostly on CBIR, which is content-based image retrieval. And the purpose for the research paper was basically the new image retrieval framework for all medical images. They use a Siamese network, which pairs image inputs and using weight sharing and a contrastive loss function, the new hash coding loss function. Two experiments were done. The first experiment just explored the feature extractions with CNNs, and it used 12,000 images and 6 body parts. While the second experiment compared the Siamese framework with 2 CNN-based hashing methods, which were CNNH and DNNH. And in this experiment, 199,000 images and 4 body parts were used. In conclusion, when comparing both experiments, the Siamese method had the highest MAP values since it was able to retrieve images a little more accurately than others. Thank you.